A game week edition of Madden, Benz, Unfiltered. The NFL season about to start. Steelers season about to start. Finally, a full offseason of quarterback conversation comes to a head, and the team will actually snap the ball, presumably to Mitch Trubisky. And then, Mark, based on the depth chart yesterday, if something should happen to him, Mason Rudolph. What do you think?
Well, first off, I'm glad the season's finally starting because perhaps it was just me, but this seemed like the longest offseason in history.
It was.
We were discussing things before training camp that we should have waited to discuss during training camp. And it made for a lot of repetitive conversation once they finally did convene at Latrobe. So I'm glad that they're about to play games that count. That said, the quarterback thing, Tim, it played out exactly as I thought it would. The minute they drafted Trubisky, he was preordained to be the starter. There was never a real competition, no matter what anybody would have us believe. And the minute they drafted Pickett, I knew he'd be inactive early in the season because you don't want him coming in cold in the middle of a game. You don't want that to be the way he's blooded in the NFL. That would be the worst possible scenario for him, whereas Mason Rudolph has handled that before. You know, he's a veteran as much as he can be for having played very limited amount of snaps. He's just more ready for that situation. This is truly what's best for everybody, even if all the Pickett-ophiles out there don't want to see it that way.
Yeah, people forget because everybody wants to compare Kenny Pickett to Ben Roethlisberger. People tend to forget that Roethlisberger was thrown in cold in a game in Baltimore to start his career, and that didn't go great. Now, the next 14 starts
well, right, Tim,
were great.
But don't forget, that was when a couple quarterbacks had been hurt. Like, he was only the backup in that game because there was already an injury.
Right. Yeah, so that's my point, is that it was people want to draw that analogy but skip over that part when they get upset that Pickett isn't the number two. Roethlisberger was the number two. He had to be thrown in, and that was the first and only tough time he had, basically, until the Patriots game in the postseason. So it's not easy to be thrown in, and if they're looking at a road game in Cincinnati, a road game against the Browns, something like that in the first 3 weeks, I don't think they want to relive that scenario with the rookie being thrown in when they could have Rudolph, who might have an easier time.
The right thing to do is the right thing to do. It's not what the citizens want the Steelers to do. So this is being handled, to my mind, exactly correctly.
All right, Steelers fans, we want you to comment. Please do on our side rail. Get your thoughts in on what the Steelers have done with the quarterback depth chart and with all the other positions that are out there. Mark, I want to echo the point that you made about this feeling like the longest offseason of all time. It was because the quarterback conversation was so pervasive, never stopped. It began and never ended. I kind of thought that's how it would go. You know who I blame? It's the Penguins for going out early and the Pirates for sucking again, because at least if those guys had been relevant longer, we would have something to distract us.
I blame Ben for retiring. When Ben retired, it opened up the biggest can of worms that can be opened in any football town. Who's going to be the quarterback? And by the way, I'm amazed, nay dismayed, at people who should know better, and maybe they're posturing, maybe it's shtick, I don't know. But people who are complaining that this quarterback situation has been handled poorly by the Steelers and practically crying, weeping openly that Pickett's the third quarterback. It's just the right thing to do. Here's another case in point. Who do you want on the sideline with the headphone and clipboard during a game? A rookie who's never played a regular season snap in the NFL, or Mason Rudolph, who's more familiar with this offense than anybody and can potentially help Trubisky walk through certain things?
Plus, Mark, the true measure of the decision, this decision that people are talking about, is what happens if Trubisky is out for a while, not if Trubisky is out for half a game. Like, if you're going to fret about what decision is being made, then that comes down to if Trubisky is out for 4 weeks or 6 or the rest of the season, and then they go to Rudolph instead of Pickett. That's where the complaining should come. I think it's much less important who finishes out one half of one game before they decide who the starter is the next week.
It won't happen that way, Tim, unless Trubisky would get hurt against Cincinnati. You know, if Trubisky got hurt in week 1, I think Rudolph would start game 2. Against New England, Belichick, and that way of playing defense, that way he ruins rookie quarterbacks.
He might ruin Rudolph, too.
Well, I think that's Trubisky or bust, that game.
Yeah.
But if Trubisky gets hurt grievously at any point past week 3 or 4, then Pickett becomes the starter. Rudolph's just the backup, period. He's the number 2 quarterback, and one of the other 2 will be the starter depending on, the situation, injury and whatnot.
Yeah, I believe the same thing. What do you think Art Rooney's press conference is about after Tomlin's? You got any idea?
Well, the fact that Art's doing it after Tomlin indicates to me it's not a football announcement, that it's like a statue or a proclamation or some crap like that.
And that the Steelers want everybody there, and it's a captive audience because everybody will still be there after Tomlin.
Yeah, people have speculated Tomlin's announcing his retirement and there'll be a succession plan. The Steelers would never do that.
Well, they would not call that a special announcement. They don't call anything that could be remotely construed as bad news a special announcement. They're saying special announcement because it's something they want to announce, and it's something they're happy about.
Well, Tim, I don't know. If Tomlin quit, for me, that would be good news. I just don't think he's a good coach anymore.
I think they think he's a good coach, and I don't think they would call that a special announcement. And if it was, then Tomlin would be making the announcement, and then Art Rooney II would follow up on it. So I
think
maybe
they're bringing the ketchup bottles back.
Maybe they're bringing Ben back. They just don't want him to do a podcast.
Maybe they're bringing Ben back dressed as a ketchup bottle.
That's right. They'll do something like, they have in Seattle with the 12th man. There'll be a special person who pours the ketchup bottle every game. Forget the terrible towel twirl. It'll be about the ketchup bottles now.
Big Ben is now Big Ketchup.
What do you think about the game specifically against Cincinnati, Mark? Can they replicate what they did and pull off a surprise on the road against a highly rated AFC team to start the season as they did against Buffalo a year ago?
I'm not ruling it out. I mean, I doubt it, but I'm not, discounting it totally. Cincinnati's got a better offensive line, but it's a new offensive line. And plus, which, Tim, like Matt Williamson pointed out on my program, it's not like Cincinnati went out and signed 3 all-pros for the offensive line. They signed guys who were better than guys who sucked, but they're not, necessarily going to all play in the Pro Bowl. And I think there is a period of adjustment when you're breaking in that many new guys on the O-line. I just don't know who's going to cover Jamar Chase or T. Higgins or Tyler Boyd. I just think Cincinnati's going to score too many points for the Steelers to have a chance. And what that says about the elite defense right off the bat, well, we'll see. But I think they're going to get shredded by Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing.
Unless they hurt Burrow. I said a prayer on my show yesterday, praying for Joe Burrow to get hurt.
I think the biggest thing that they've got to deal with is stopping Mixon early, because if they stop Mixon early, at least they can concentrate on the pass. If they show the balance that they showed against the Steelers in those 2 games, it could be lights out because of the reasons you point out. They're not going to know who to cover, and they're still going to have to worry about the run.
No matter how good one dimension might be, it's always better to turn a team one-dimensional.
Yes, and the Bengals, I think,
like you said, easier said than done. Mixon's a heck of a back.
I think the Bengals might be the toughest team in football to do that to, actually. How do you see the direct order of finish, Mark, happening in the AFC North? Who do you see finishing in which slot? I've got the Steelers in 3rd in front of the Browns, but behind the Ravens, and I like the Bengals to win it again.
I got Baltimoreans to win the division in a narrow race over Cincinnati. I got Cleveland 3rd, Pittsburgh 4th. People are underestimating Cleveland with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. That's still a really good team and a really good defense and a really good running game. Cleveland and Baltimore are both bludgeoning teams. The Steelers fancy themselves to be tough. Cleveland and Baltimore are much more physical, much tougher than the Steelers this year.
I think that the 10-win mark might win the AFC North again. Maybe it's 11 this year because the teams are better, but then again, maybe they beat each other up. For the Steelers to make the playoffs and be better than the 7-win team that you had predicted on the Mad Monday podcast, which I know you might tweak if you get to your Friday show and then change your mind.
Friday prediction, Tim, just 5 days away.
Well, 4 now because we are doing this on a Tuesday. So you're actually
just
a day
4
closer.
days away, Tim.
But I think it's going to be 8 wins for the Steelers. We've got to remember that last year the Steelers got to 9 for 2 big reasons. They got into playoffs for 2 big reasons, I should say. The first reason is that the Jacksonville Jaguars somehow upset the Colts at the end of the season. The second reason is they got 4 wins in division against the Ravens and against the Browns. I don't think they get 4 wins against those two teams this year. I think there's going to be a big difference in that context. Even one extra loss is a big difference.
Well, expanding on that, you say the 10 wins might get the division title. If that's the case, maybe only one team from the division makes the playoffs. Maybe they beat each other up to that degree.
Hey, the Steelers only made it with 10 wins, taking the title last year as the second wild card because of a tie. And essentially, they made it because of a half a game.
Yeah, I just can't think of them in a playoff vein, although I think they'll hang in there till season's end in some mathematical method of contention. They'll be in it mathematically. By the way, Tim, when I said on my show yesterday, when I said a little prayer that Joe Burrow gets hurt, not too bad, just through like week 11 when the Steelers played them a second time. And I had somebody tweet, how would you feel if you really got hurt now? Because you wished it upon him. I go, what? Are you kidding? I'd feel great. I mean, to know you could do that, to have that kind of power, that's unbelievable.
Well, I think you're rooting for Kimo von Oelhoffen to be resigned. Is that where you're going?
No, I think I'm ripping off a Louis C.K. routine.
Did he do that about football or did he do that about something else? What was the genesis
he did
of
that?
that?
A friend of his was getting on an airplane.
Yes.
He said to him, I hope your plane crashes. And the friend goes, take that back. How would you feel if my plane crashed? Louis C.K. goes, what? I'd feel great. I mean, to have that kind of power?
I do want people, by the way, to comment. Let's see if you can get on with your direct order of finish. Tell us who do you think is going to win each spot in the AFC North, first, second, third, fourth. We'll kick that around a little bit more.
By the way, Tim, like I wouldn't be shocked if the Steelers finished third and the Browns fourth. I wouldn't be shocked if Cincinnati finished first and the Ravens second, contrary to what I predicted. But I think it's a clear delineation between the top two and the bottom two.
Well, the thing about the Ravens is everybody says, well, they're healthy this year. Last year, they were injured a bunch. The Ravens are hurt every year. The Ravens are like the Steelers in that regard.
Part of that's because of the way they play, Tim.
Exactly. Yes. That's the biggest reason why.
When you bludgeon yourself just as much.
Especially when you run the ball that much and you rely on your running backs to make a huge chunk of your offense on the ground, they get banged up.
You know what is weird too, Tim? And I talked about this on my program. The Steelers have led the league in sacks for 5 years running, correct?
I believe that's right, yes.
Which is an amazing figure, by the way. Okay, but how come they never hurt any quarterbacks? When's the last time the Steelers knocked a quarterback out of a game? Seriously. Now, they've had quarterbacks knocked out by other teams before they played them. They played a lot of second-string quarterbacks last year even and benefited from that. But they never seem to knock one out themselves. In fact, quite the opposite. TJ Wadd'll sack a quarterback, and he'll be the guy that's hurt.
Yeah, the guys that they played last year that were backup quarterbacks, they got Huntley at the end of the year. They played an injured Baker Mayfield. He didn't go out. He should have. They got Geno Smith. They got Teddy Bridgewater.
Right.
And I can even go back to the year before that. They had a bunch when they got in during the hot streak, during the 11-0 hot streak. They got some backup quarterbacks. So, yeah, they've had a run of luck in that regard. Losing a quarterback in game, I'm struggling to remember. Of course, people in Cincinnati are going to see this and go, what about Carson Palmer? They did that on purpose,
That's so long ago. And if they did do it on purpose, so what? They won.
John Kitna almost won the he did actually, I think, come right in and score a touchdown, but the Steelers ended up winning in the second half and turned the game around.
You know what was weird about that game, and it is a long time ago? John Kitna wasn't a bad quarterback.
And I don't think he was bad in that game. I don't remember.
But that rattled the Bengals badly.
Yeah. And then they got all
rattled them, and they made mistakes because they were rattled.
Yeah, and they got all biting each other in the locker room and all this other stuff, stories about Chad Johnson getting into it with people and so on and so forth. But, yeah, that's going back a long way. Mark, what'd you make of the backyard brawl? I know you didn't see it, but what do you think of the trickle effect of what it means for the Pitt Panthers going forward?
Well, I think it was a wonderful way to reignite that rivalry, and the atmosphere, coupled with the way the game was so closely contested, says that they were idiots to have ever ceased the rivalry, let alone for 11 years. And hopefully it never ceases again.
I want college football rivalries to return. One advance that I floated out when I was in for you last week, and I've written about this, is you get these two huge super conferences that everybody's talking about. Then you make subdivisions within the super conferences. And the next thing you know, maybe you've reconstructed the Big East. Maybe you've reconstructed what used to be the Southwest Conference, the Big 12 as it used to be, the Pac-10 as it used to be. I could see that happening. That's a way to make it happen if it's going to go in that direction.
Well, the NCAA should actually run college football, which it doesn't. The SEC and Big Ten run college football, and everything else trickles down. My way of doing it is, like, I would take the top 40 teams in college football, okay, and have 4 leagues of 10 teams each, and you play every team in your league once, and then the 4 league winners play off for a national championship. That would be the fairest way to do it. Every team among those 40 would have a chance to win the national championship, in theory anyway, before the season started. And then you align those divisions, those leagues geographically. That's the way to do it. You preserve tradition. You have geographic rivalries. Those were always the most important things about college football. Where programs like Alabama and Ohio State, who basically run college football, where they're incredibly selfish is, Alabama's like, okay, as long as we play Auburn, nothing else matters. Ohio State, as long as we play Michigan, nothing else matters. But they've created a situation where Pitt and Penn State can't play, at least not in a conference game. They've created a situation where Pitt and West Virginia can't play, at least not in a conference game. Same with Oklahoma and Texas. As long as they play, they figure that's college football. The big college football schools don't give a damn about anybody else. And, that kind of passion has to trickle down, and they're preventing that.
I think, in theory, what they've floated out there as the new version of the college football playoff makes enough sense. I like it enough. But what I don't understand is, if we're moving more and more to 2 super conferences, then why are they taking such time to map out this playoff that's going to involve 6 different conference winners and 6 wild cards? Like,
you see, I don't like the new format.
I don't like buys.
No, I don't care about the buys. I just think it's pointless. There's such a wide disparity, especially now with the transfer portal and NIL money. There's such a wide disparity between the top 4 or 5, schools and everybody else, that all you're doing is programming close games in the first round among lesser teams, slaughters in the quarterfinals, and then you get to the real playoff, which is just like it is now. You just take a while to get to what it is now. But it'll be the same teams in those semifinals every year.
I think they're hoping for the occasional one-off, UCF, Cincinnati, Boise State upsets a big dog in the first round.
That's not going to happen.
Well, they could upset a 5th seed. That's potentially possible. They could, but not a 1 seed.
All they're doing is taking a longer, more lucrative route to the same playoff.
Yeah, I think they'd admit that. I think they'd give us.
Okay, they have every right to do what they want, but like all the things we're talking about, as regards college football, is why I don't watch it all anymore. And I don't watch at all. I watched like a quarter of Ohio State Notre Dame the other night because I was flipping the dial. It felt foreign to be watching college football. I've lost interest for such a long time.
It's almost like you're watching it with a scouting eye towards who's going to be drafted in the pros more than you are watching the game itself.
No, it's almost like I'm wondering what time the rerun of that 70s show starts.
Mark, real quick before we get to some comments here, and we do want some more comments about the Steelers, the AFC North, college football, how it's set up, your thoughts on the backyard brawl, etc. What do you think of the Hall of Fame inductions for the Pirates and how they set that up?
I was there. I liked it. If you closed your eyes, you could almost imagine them being competitive.
I actually didn't see the inductions in front of the stadium. I was there for the presser, like the families.
I wasn't there for the thing by the river.
Yeah.
I was there, inside the park, which was largely the same ceremony from what I'm told. I liked it. I mean, it was good for the 3 guys who are still alive. The 16 dead guys, their families, I guess, I didn't see the point of so many dead guys. I would rather see Dick Groat, Manny Sanguian, Vern Law, Elroy Face, whoever. But for what it was very good. Greg Brown was brilliant as the MC. Steve Blass, of course, made a speech. Dave Parker reprised his line about, when I got up in the morning, I knew 3 things. Sun going to shine, wind going to blow, Big Dave going to go 4 for 4. And Bill Mazeroski didn't talk, as is his wont.
Yes, exactly. I thought Brown did I don't know if he did the same thing in front of you that he did for everybody who was there for the initial inductions, where he said, I have Maz's speech. He asked me to read it on his behalf. I have an extra binder here. He opened it up and said, thank you, and then closed it.
Well, it's like we called Maz to come on the show because we had Parker and Blass both on.
Yeah.
And Maz has been on the show several times before. And he just told, his people told my people, look, I'm just not doing that anymore. And that's fine. I mean, of all the guys who were humble and and classy, Bill Mazeroski tops that list.
Yeah, I've interviewed him about 4 or 5 times now, and every time I walk away thinking, wow, how cool was it that I just spoke with this living link to history, and he is just nonplussed by it. Like
he had the biggest hit in baseball history. If that would have won for a New York team instead of beating a New York team, it would be universally acknowledged as baseball's biggest moment ever.
Oh, I agree with that. And I think he is remarkably comfortable in the spotlight for somebody who doesn't like being in the spotlight, but he embraces his role of needing to be that conduit to history.
And one thing we forget too, Tim, is that, again, because it beat a New York team, it's not as revered like the shot heard around the world with Bobby Thompson, Brooklyn Dodgers, New York Giants. But that's the biggest upset in World Series history.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. Well,
no other is even close.
The only other one that comes to mind is when the Dodgers beat the A's with Gibson because the A's were such a machine. Maybe the Reds when they beat the A's. Then we just walked away saying, hey, the A's were great, but they couldn't finish in the World Series but once. They needed an earthquake.
Right. But yeah, so, but Maz is the best. He's, Tim, when I was 9 years old, the first fan letter I ever wrote to Bill Mazeroski, and he wrote back. He sent me a picture, which I still have.
Yeah, Maz is a wonderful personality. I'm glad he is as good of a person as he is a big part of history. Let's get to some comments here. Richard says, at best, the Steelers will be in a race to finish third over the Browns. That's exactly what I think it'll be.
Yeah, and like I said, Tim, hold a text. It's not important.
Is it from Maz?
It's not. Yeah,
does he want to come on that? Does he want to come on the live stream, but not your radio show? Is that
you think Maz has ever texted?
Do I think Maz knows what a live stream is? No, I don't.
I still think the Steelers will be mathematically in the playoff race till the very end, though. Don't you?
Well, if they're going to only win 7, I don't think so.
I think they're going to tromp. I think they're going to tromp around at 5-5 for a while. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think if you think it's 7 or 8, I think if they're going to win their last game to get to 8 potentially, that's going to knock them out because I think you're going to need at least 9, maybe 10 to get in. Because I see some teams in the AFC getting better this year.
Put it this way, Tim. You know how I do viewing parties for every Steeler game? And by the way, the first one's at the Schoolhouse Tavern in Claridge this Sunday. Please be there. But I've only scheduled through week 15.
And you're leaving the rest wide open, huh?
Yeah, because I'm not sure the interest will be at fever pitch at that point.
So week 15, you're not going to do anything.
Week 15 is also Christmas Eve.
Yeah, Christmas Eve before the Raider game,
week
right?
16 is Christmas Eve.
Okay.
Because don't forget there's a bye in there. But the 15th game is Christmas Eve.
EJ says current NFL rules protect quarterbacks. That era of football is over. Lambert was right. Quarterbacks should wear skirts.
Maybe they could borrow yours, EJ.
You're the first person to ever advance that analogy, EJ. As far as hurting quarterbacks goes, to your point, Mark, earlier, I am struggling to remember the last time an in-game quarterback went out because of a hit against the Steelers. I don't know. Hey, Burrow's coming into this a little bit compromised as it is because he's had such a slow participation in camp due to that appendectomy that he's had.
I think they should put his appendix back in during like Apollo.
Kramer says being almost a TD dog at home against an average SEC team, meaning Pitt, they beat them last year. What's it going to take for this program to get national respect? Penn State puts Dr. Pepper in their vending machines and makes more headlines. Well, I didn't see that. Although I do like the idea of putting Dr. Pepper in the vending machines. I love me a good Dr. Pepper.
Why are we comparing Pitt and Penn State?
Because that's what Pitt fans do. Because that's what Narduzzi does.
He's a dink. That thing after the game where he chastised ESPN for saying West Virginia fans had 75% of the tickets. You just won a game. Be happy. But he's just a dink. He's not happy unless he's unhappy. But I'm surprised Pitt's an underdog to Tennessee at Acrisure.
Yeah, I am too because, maybe Tennessee is better. But, it's not like Pitt sank that much, especially the point they just beat a Big 12 team by a touchdown.
I thought maybe Tennessee would be like a 3.5, 4-point favorite. 7 surprises me.
I'm a little reticent to jump on Tennessee's bandwagon just yet. Nick says, I think Trubisky will end up being good enough to start all season. Pickett will only play due to necessity, meaning injury. Next year will be a true controversy because Trubisky won't give the Steelers a reason to bench him.
That's possible, but I think, let's say that the Steelers are mathematically out of it, even if Trubisky plays well. Let's say they're mathematically out of it on Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
I think Pickett starts starting then.
Yeah, Pickett's starting that game if they're out of it, and like
Even if Trubisky has played well.
Yeah, that would be a highlight time to do it. What with the Raiders' immaculate reception hype and all that's going to go on. That's another theory that's out there. This announcement from Rooney has something to do with the immaculate reception game or something like that.
Yeah, we need to talk about that more.
By the way, Nick,
one thing about the quarterback thing, though, Tim.
Yeah.
Let's say Trubisky plays real well and they still don't make the playoffs, and Pickett does go in and start the last 3 games and he plays pretty good. Okay, then next year at camp you really do have a competition.
Yes. Yeah, you absolutely do. I think
at that point, Pickett wins the tie.
Because he is a first-round pick, and you can't bury your first-round pick forever, especially for a guy that you've only got under contract for 2 years.
See, that's why it surprised me they drafted Pickett after they signed Trubisky, which we've talked about ad nauseum. But let me throw an example in there. Okay, using, of course, the best sports team in the world, Liverpool Football Club. They have 2 really good young midfielders, Harvey Elliott and Fabio Carvalho, who are 19 and 20 respectively, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they need like a big-time midfielder right now because they're kind of slumping. And it's too late now. The transfer window closed September 1st. But the reason they didn't bring anybody in is because they don't want to block those 2. You know what I mean? They don't want to bring in a guy who's going to keep them from getting playing time now or in the long run because they think they're the real deal. That's why it shocked me. I mean, you brought in Pickett when you had a guy there to block him already. Now, if it's only for a year, I don't see a problem. And I think if Trubisky doesn't, Freudian slip, I think if Pickett doesn't start game 1 next year, if it's the right thing to do, it's the right thing to do. But I think then you have created a problem.
Yeah, I keep saying over and over again, Mark, I don't have a problem with what they ended up doing because they tried to make themselves as best as they could be at quarterback by signing Trubisky, and then they didn't want to pass on the opportunity of a quarterback that they thought would be their long-term guy for the next 10 years.
Oh, right. Depends how much you like Pickett.
Both decisions are sound. It's just 2 things. Number one, it changes the narrative about why you drafted Pickett because initially they were saying it's because he was the most ready quarterback in the NFL draft. Well, that doesn't matter because you got Trubisky.
To be fair, that was never their narrative.
But it was, though, Mark. I mean, like what Kevin Colbert said on your show, what Kevin Colbert and Mike Tomlin said at the press conference that night, they talked about that, about why he was, in their eyes, as appealing as he was to them.
Did they put in those words?
I know I sent you a copy of the transcript.
See, like here's the way I interpret all that talk about the most NFL ready quarterback. If you're the most NFL ready quarterback in the draft, it doesn't mean you're actually NFL ready. It just means you're closer than anybody else.
Well, and you know what? Based on what we saw from Tennessee, it looks like Malik Willis might be more ready than anybody ever thought that he could be. So let's keep an eye on how that develops. Nick,
I think Pickett will turn out to be a real good NFL quarterback.
Nick, by the way, adds
maybe not Pro Bowl, but a smidge below.
Cincy, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Cleveland. Nick tacked that on as his order of finish in the AFC. That's exactly how I
pick there, Nick.
And I got Cincinnati beating Baltimore and maybe a tiebreaker. Oh, Sam is a very important question, Mark. When will this show be open to a studio audience? Well, I think Mark and I would have to be in the same place at the same time for that to happen, Sam.
Let me tell you something. I would do it for studio audience if I got paid to be there. I'd love to do it. Anybody
studio
out there
audience, kind of like that 70s show.
What's that?
We could do it like that 70s show. We could have a studio audience.
I'm not sure if they might have had them watch the video. I'm not sure if it was live. Oh, no, it was live. I know that because I remember the last show, they came out and took a bow, except for Topher Grace, who everybody hated. He had left already.
Or maybe that was just the one-off that they did in front of a studio audience. Is that possible, or do you think they did that every time?
No, they probably did it in front of a studio audience, but I think they probably edited the sound, too.
Bill says the special announcement is probably something about a throwback uniform or something along those lines for the Steelers' 90th season. Yeah, I don't think this is going to be all that incredibly important because if it was, it could stand alone and it wouldn't have to follow Mike Tomlin's press conference when everybody is there.
I think Sally Wiggin is having Art Rooney II's child.
Or maybe Sally's buying the team. She's got a lot of WTAE money.
What a lovely way of saying how much you love the Steelers.
Last one, Eric. A lot of fans believe coaching can make a significant difference in quality of play, but regarding this offensive line, does that apply, or are these players just so awful that there really is nobody who can make improvements? I don't agree with the popular assumption that someone like Munchak would help. These guys just stink.
Well, I think that the fact that they've had, 4 offensive line coaches since Munchak, since 2018, I'm not sure that's helped because you not only have to relearn, you have to unlearn. But Matt Williamson, who I trust in matters like this, he thinks Chooks is average. And he thinks James Daniels worked his way up to average in the last exhibition game. So maybe he just run right-handed.
Yeah, that's right. Just go to the right every time.
Faneca talked about that on my show once.
Running to the right?
Well, he goes, listen, it's not ideal. He goes, but if you have a good guard and tackle on one side of the line and you put the tight end over there, you can kind of fake it.
Yeah, that does make sense. I mean, you might want, because the left side is so porous, though, to put the tight end on the other side so that, you can help out on the backside pursuit from a linebacker or something like that.
And I'm like, well, what about pass protection? He goes, well, it depends what side. He goes, you don't see many right-handed quarterbacks rolling left.
All right, that'll do it for us for Madden Benz Unfiltered this week. We'll be back to our usual Monday time slot. By the way,
Tim, you know what right-handed quarterback often did roll left? Because I watched the movie last night. Shane Falco in The Replacements.
Was that on last night? That'll be on a bunch this week.
It's on every night. It's on every night. I got to admit, that is an endearing movie to watch over and over again.
Was the girlfriend, the cheerleader, was she in anything else after that? I don't remember her being in much else.
Well, when I was watching the movie last night, a buddy of mine was visiting from out of town, and we concluded that the reason they cast that actress is because she looks like Lori Petty, who was Keanu Reeves' girl in Point Break.
Yep.
And I want to say it was in one other movie with Keanu Reeves, too.
I don't know what that would have been, but that does make sense. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
She looked like Lori Petty, didn't she?
She did a little bit, yeah. Yep. So Mark and I will be back on Monday after the Bengals-Steelers game. We'll recap the first game of the year. And what day, Mark, is you're doing your prediction on Friday, but what day is Sally Wiggin coming on to announce the birth of her baby?
She'll be having the baby live in studio when the time comes.
Live streamed.
And by the way, Tim, that guy brought up a good point. I would be willing to expand this show to an hour if we did it live somewhere.
Okay.
But I would want, and I'm sure you would too, I'd want mega bucks.
An insane amount of money to get to one place to live stream. Yes, absolutely, I would.
I don't know about insane. I mean, how much would you want?
Well, more than what we're getting right now. I know that.
Yeah, no need to talk about that. It's embarrassing.
Yes, it is.
But it would depend. It would depend where we went too.
Yeah.
I'd do it someplace close for $300. How about you?
Well, yeah, maybe something like that. I mean, I'm thinking, we used to do the appearances at cheerleaders all the time. At least I did. But cheerleaders, 10 o'clock on a Monday morning, I don't know if there's going to be much of a crowd there.
Yeah, cheerleaders, I'd wind up in a coma pinned under somebody too. It didn't take a lot of convincing, but I've aged out of that.
All right, we'll be back Monday, either live in front of a studio audience or in our respective kitchens. One way or the other, we'll figure that out on Monday. Steelers, Bengals, post-game wrap-up here on Madden Benz Unfiltered on the Trib Live Facebook stream.